Hi guys, how are you doing? And welcome to the channel, Striving for a Better World. Today we're gonna be talking about why Ukraine will win this war, and why Russia will lose. As you all know, Vladimir Putin has made a huge blunder when he ordered his troops to invade the entire Ukrainian territory on February the 24th, 2022. And has also disrespected and disregarded Ukraine's sovereignty when Russia annexed Crimea back on February the 20th, 2014. But before we get into all of that, I would like to thank you guys for tuning in. It really means a lot. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. The goal here is to get to 1 million subs, and do give us a thumbs up at some point during this video. Now, I know many of you guys watching these videos would like to be doing something to help Ukraine, but because of where you live or other circumstances, you're not able to do so. However, by you simply subscribing to the channel and liking these videos, you'll be able to do so, which literally takes less than 3 seconds. I mean it, just try it now and you'll see. I'm going to count down 3 seconds for you to do so right now, and then we'll continue. Okay, now that you have done so, the mere fact that you have spared 3 seconds of your valuable time for Ukraine's cause, you too will be able to contribute in a huge way, because proceeds from this channel will be sent to help ordinary Ukrainian people, whose lives have been disrupted by this unprovoked and disastrous war, get through this difficult time. My challenge to you, at the end of this video, is to tell your friends and family to do the same, so that they can join the cause and be a part of a larger community, striving for a better world. Let's get into it. When we take a look at the Ukraine war map today, and compare it to 4 months ago, we see where Ukraine has regained almost 40% of its territory that Russia has captured since the start of this war. With each passing month, we see the Russian position becoming weaker and weaker, as its troops suffer from low morale, becoming heavily reliant on outdated equipment, as well as taking high casualties. While on the other hand, we see Ukraine's position getting stronger, and its stocks keep increasing. The Russians are running out of options, which I will be covering in future videos. But the sooner Russia realizes that this war was doomed after its first month, the Russian government should have found a way to wiggle out of this war. After all, they fully control the narrative back in Russia. Look at this ridiculous statement put out by Russia. Moscow calls on global organizations to stop Kiev from butchering civilians. The report went on to say that Russia is urging international organizations to immediately force Ukraine to stop massacring civilians who Kiev accuses of collaborating with Moscow, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said on Thursday. She went on to say, the government, the Kiev regime, has claimed it plans to hunt for supporters of Russia and holders of Russian passports among local residents, and punish them for high treason and collaboration. She claims that so-called witnesses say Ukrainian militants have been butchering, torturing, beating and shooting civilians. And she's urging the proper international organizations to use their influence on Kiev so that it stops slaughtering civilians. This must be done immediately, she emphasized at a briefing. It's quite funny that all these accusations sound exactly like what the Russian military is doing in Ukraine. The Russian diplomat said Ukrainian militants had been videotaping their deeds so that they could use the footage to pin these crimes committed by Ukrainian forces on Russia, or to report to those who instructed them to kill as many Russians as possible. Which world are these Russian people living in? Because all they are doing is accusing Kiev of the very things that their military is doing. These people continue to turn a blind eye to the genocide that the leaders are orchestrating. We see in this headline that it says, the Zaporizhzhia plant employee that helped the Ukrainian army was detained. Russia's army is stationed at this nuclear power plant, which is a serious cause for concern. However, they deny this fact to the world, and instead claim that the Ukrainian military are the ones putting this plant at risk. The truth is, this plant isn't located in the Donbas region, so Russia has no logical reason to even be near this nuclear power plant. They are simply doing this to keep the Ukrainian citizens on edge, and use this plant as a tool to intimidate the Ukrainian population. Russia is now saying that the West would be responsible for possible nuclear incidents at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. They claim that Western countries are aware that the Ukrainian side has been shelling the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and bear responsibility for possible nuclear incidents. Since they have not yet called on Kiev to stop the bombings, the evidence is there for all to see that the Russian soldiers are the ones occupying this power plant. Russia went on to say that Western countries undoubtedly know that the bombings are conducted by the Ukrainian side, and that lately, most of them refrain from absurd statements that the Russians at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant have been systematically shelling themselves for almost 2 months. Yet, if Western states are seriously concerned over the danger of a nuclear catastrophe, they should directly call on Kiev to stop reckless actions. Earlier this month, a mission led by Rafael Grossi visited the nuclear facility. And later, his agency published a report urging that a security zone be created around the nuclear power plant to prevent accidents caused by military actions. Earlier, Russia's permanent representative to the UN, Vasilina Benzia, asserted that demilitarization would not ensure the power plant's security, but would make it vulnerable to provocations on the part of Ukrainian forces instead. So Russia admits to putting their forces at the plant, but won't take responsibility for any unpleasant outcomes. In this report, Russia is saying that Zelensky only met with the military in Izium. Russia is claiming that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky only met with the military during his visit to Izium, adding that civilians are being filtered. Zelensky arrived in Izium and met with the military. He did not meet with civilians, is Russia's claim. The local population is being filtered. The Kiev forces carry out repressions against civilians they suspect of being loyal to Russia. Russia claims that on the photos, one can see Zelensky wearing a jacket with a patch decorated with skull and bones and Ukraine or death caption. They claim this emblem is popular among Ukrainian right-wing radicals, including those participating in the armed operation in Donbas. The irony with these statements from Russia is that their president never visited the front lines, so, to counter what Zelensky did, they have to fabricate bogus accusations and absurd criticism, because the whole ideology is looking weaker and weaker with each Ukrainian advance. On September the 12th, Kharkov Region Military Civilian Administration head Vitaly Ganchev reported that Ukrainian forces carry out repressions in the region, including shooting civilians. He claimed that on the same day, Kiev representative told the BBC that a filtration will take place in the city, which will take about 10 more days. The conclusion from this is that Russia at this point is clearly losing on the battlefield, and they have no news of any substance to give their population, so they make baseless claims and ridiculous criticisms, while at the same time creating this alternate reality for them to always pump these nonsensical arguments into their society. Another headline from Russia reads, "Removing threat to Russia is the best security guarantee for Ukraine," says Kremlin. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov on Wednesday said, Ukraine should eliminate threats to Russia that are emanating from that country if it wants guarantees for its own security. He said Moscow will react negatively if Kiev's proposal for international security guarantees for Ukraine, which was released on Tuesday, is ever signed. Under the document, a binding agreement should be signed between Ukraine and the United States, on the one hand, and between the EU and a number of other countries. Russia is stating that, despite previously voiced proposals, the document does not contemplate either Kiev's abstention from joining NATO, or a neutral status for Ukraine, or Russia's participation as a security guarantor. The biggest challenge I have with Russia's argument is that, before the start of this war, Ukraine was okay with being neutral if Russia hadn't invaded. However, Russia wanted Ukraine to give up its territories with no objections, which is unrealistic in this day and age. It's also quite ironic how Russia now wants to be a security guarantor, when prior to annexing Crimea, Russia, the United States, and England were always security guarantors for Ukraine. So I fully understand why the UK and the US are now helping to defend Ukraine. Kherson official says Zelensky plotting Bucha-style false flag in Izium. They are claiming that President Vladimir Zelensky is planning to stage a false flag in Izium, similar to the one in Bucha, where Russian troops were accused of mass killings. The Russian officials are trying to get ahead of the findings because they are aware that their troops are committing war crimes and they really don't care. This has been Russia's tactic in majority of the conflicts that they are involved in. In a video address on Thursday, Zelensky alleged a mass burial site had been found in Izium, Kharkov region. The Ukrainian leader pledged to bring foreign media there. The Russians are saying they have already heard all these stories about Bucha and Irpin. The Russians claim that Zelensky and Ukraine has been acting like all Nazi activists. They shoot and kill people, then show that to foreign media. On April 3, the Russian Defense Ministry rejected the Kiev regime's accusations of civilian killings in Bucha, Kiev region. The ministry noted that the Russian armed forces had left Bucha on March 30, while the evidence of crimes emerged only 4 days later, after Ukrainian security service officers had entered the town. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov slammed the situation in Bucha as a fake attack. If Russia didn't own it back then they are certainly not gonna own up to it now. Russia's top diplomat went on to say, Moscow viewed the situation in Bucha as a provocation threatening international peace and security. One thing is for certain, these Russian officials are getting crazier by the day. Are you kidding me? This man must be crazy if he thinks Russia has everything under control. Let's now see some stunning videos showing what's happening on the grounds in Ukraine. We'll see a mixture of happy times and sad times, especially when we see evidence that people were tortured. These videos also shows the Ukrainian soldiers in action on the front lines, taking back the territory of Ukraine from the hand of Russia's barbaric army, and equipment received from the Russia Lend-Lease. Russia will never take Ukraine. The will and courage of the people will always prevail, and Ukraine will never surrender to a dictator, especially Vladimir Putin, who has murdered so many men, women and children on Ukrainian soil. He has blood on his hands, and one day justice will catch up to him. The Russian people don't enjoy the freedoms of the average Ukrainian, and this is why their leaders are trying to take what they lack. Ukraine will fight to the very end to preserve its most basic human right for the people of today and tomorrow. Glory to all the heroes of Ukraine and Slava Ukraini. To all the people across the globe, have a peaceful day and be safe, and enjoy your freedom wherever you are.